So we're here to talk about a poem by Emily Dickinson called Alone and in a Circumstance, and we're in the Morgan Library and Museum where there's this wonderful exhibit of Emily Dickinson's manuscripts and other materials, and we have the crazy manuscript of this poem here, which we're going to talk a little bit. We have the first page of it, and we have Emily here. Hello, Emily.
Hello, Al.
And Allie.
Hey, Al.
And we have Carolyn Vega, who's one of the curators of this exhibit. We're so honored that you were willing to spend some time talking about this.
Yeah.
I'll read the poem very quickly, and then what we're going to do, the four of us, is try to tell the story of the poem, like what happens. We don't usually do that, but I think it's worth it because we can't possibly figure. This is a poem that's out of control. Do you want to try to get at least the first page?
Yeah.
So you're going to. So Carolyn's going to. We're going to go along with her finger. It's not going to be easy, but you know this pretty well at this point.
I'll give it a shot.
Okay, here we go. Alone and in a circumstance, reluctant to be told, a spider on my reticence assiduously crawled. Yeeks. And that wasn't Emily, that was me. And so much more at home than I immediately grew, I felt myself a visitor and hurriedly withdrew. Revisiting my late abode with articles of claim, I found it quietly assumed as a, I'm going to say gymnasium, but it could be gymnasium, where tax asleep and title off the inmates of the air. We're running out of the first page. Perpetual presumption took, as each were special heir. And now you actually have a reproduction of the second page. All right, here it is. If any strike me on the street, I can return the blow. If any take my property according to the law, so that rhyme didn't work. The statute is my learned friend, but what redress can be? For an offense not here nor there, so not inequity. That larceny of time and mind, the marrow of the day, by spider, or forbid it, Lord, that I should specify. Wow. Okay, what we're going to do now is just try to tell the story, and there's going to be parts left out. Okay, so once upon a time, she's alone, and a circumstance seems to be like a thing. Something, oh my goodness, I'm in a circumstance. And what comes in?
A spider.
A spider, not a good thing in Dickinson's cosmology, I think. Okay, so Carolyn, what does this spider do, or what's it?
It crawls in some way.
Assiduously.
First assiduously.
But in the manuscript, she tries 4 adverbs.
Yes.
Do you have them in front of you? I have
Let's
them.
see. I can try reading her handwriting.
Oh, you want to read her handwriting? Okay, cool.
Okay.
Good luck.
Well, yeah.
I can help you.
Let's see if I get it right.
Okay.
Assiduously, deliberately.
Yes.
Determinedly.
Determinately, yes.
Determinately.
Yes. Which is not really a word.
Yeah. And impertinently.
Yes, so she chose assiduously. So this spider, an assiduous spider, is crawling all over, right? A spider on my reticence. So there's a spider crawling on her reticence. Emily Dickinson's famously reticent, yes? So?
Yeah, I mean, I like,
especially
scary. In that draft state, that all of the adjectives that she's using to describe the spider are the exact opposite somehow of her reticence.
Yeah, right. The spider seems to really get what the spider pushes her button on the reticence issue. So Carolyn, this is the perfect time to ask you about this really unusual
What's
manuscript.
Going on here? Yeah, so, well, first of all, we have a stamp, a postage stamp, a regular 3-cent postage stamp here.
Was that the first class cost in 1870s
It was,
or whatever?
and I looked it up, and I think this was issued like 2 years before she actually used it. It's a pretty new stamp. Mm-hmm. And then, can you see there's 2 text clippings here? Yes. Can you read what those say?
So that is the title of a novel by George Sand, right?
Exactly. And these came from an article in Harper's in May 1870, which is one way that we've dated this manuscript, May 1870.
How did you ever identify?
Another scholar identified.
The issue of Atlantic Monthly.
Yes, incredible. Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm. And
must have been a review of Mopra or something like that? Okay.
It was a review. The reviewer was nervous that this was a dangerous book, possibly, which is sort of interesting.
So she's doing this like 20th century collage, almost like Picasso or something.
Yeah, and this is unusual for her. So there are not really other manuscripts that look like this. She did do text clippings out of her Bible and some other things. We don't know what happened to all of that. But so first she does the collage kind of activity, I guess, with the clippings and the stamp, and then she drafts the poem around it. So you've got the stamp with these, I don't know what they look like to you, sort of sticking out into the body of the poem. And I think it's interesting that they're like going to the side and not like down or something.
What else do they look like?
Like, I just thought of a spider. I mean, like about 6 legs short, but it's small and leggy and irritating.
It's a spider! Okay, do we want to do something with that?
Sure. I guess if the spider does refer to a kind of paternalistic or just irritating review of a female novelist's book, then the thing that's disturbing her quiet is a kind of a literary sensibility that she finds offensive or just beneath her in some way.
So before we offer, I'm going to say non-final words because we can't possibly close read this impossible poem, I'd like to ask Carolyn a question I've asked her before, which is in a different context. Why is it important? You're a curator at the Morgan. You spent a couple of years presumably getting this exhibit ready. You really care about this. You want the public to see her manuscripts. Tell us now why it's important that we read Emily Dickinson, and Susan Howe makes this case, and people in our course in Mod Po are very familiar with Susan Howe's My Emily Dickinson, cares so much about the dashes, the way they were, all that stuff. Can you say why it's important for people to see this or experience this?
Well, so Emily Dickinson wrote about 1,789 poems. Only 10 of those were published during her lifetime. So we don't have her final word in print about how to represent all of these choices. And her earliest editors made these choices. So they picked what they thought was most likely the correct reading. Sometimes they slapped titles on them or numbered them, made other changes to the punctuation. And as much as you try, I think, in a scholarly kind of edition to represent all of these choices.
Can't really do it, can you?
I mean, reading footnotes isn't the same thing,
right.
I would say. So,
and not only that, but she's, in this case, creating something more like an artwork in pencil with the stamp.
Certainly.
She is making a material text that is would you go so far as to argue that facsimile is probably the way we should be reading Emily Dickinson?
Facsimile with the transcription close by, because her handwriting is pretty difficult.
That's great. Okay, so now we're just going to quickly get final words on this poem. Weird. Emily, final thought?
I do enjoy that the poem is so inscrutable, and also you really can't get the kind of, I guess, I don't know what you call it, kind of extra literary understanding of what's irritating her without this weird collage thing. And I don't know, I don't know what to make of it, but I like the fact that her response to a reviewer that irritated her was to write an extremely difficult poem.
Yeah, that's great. That's beautiful. Allie, final thought?
I like that looking at the real thing. The whole poem is literally like
Is this your first time seeing a Dickinson manuscript?
Yes, well, that was my first time.
What's it feel like? You've done so much Dickinson.
It's amazing.
Here she is.
Yeah, it makes her feel more like a real person.
Yeah.
I think it puts you more into her room where she's...
Make Carolyn cry because she's worked so hard at this. This is exactly what curators are hoping for.
But it lets you kind of be at her desk or wherever she was writing, and it somehow brings like the height of and the myth of Emily Dickinson down to something kind of corporeal. which is great.
Body,
Yeah.
the body of the poet, the biographical body of the poet, but also the body of the materiality of the text. Thank you, Carolyn, Vega, for
thank you for
spending
coming
time with
in.
us. Emily, thank you.
Thanks, Al.
Allie, thank you.